When I was 11, almost 12, the woman living above me was a coke dealer. The night of my 12th birthday, she went missing. Not long after, her boyfriend came down to ask if he could use our phone. This was 2004, so not having a cell phone was more common than it is now. For a little context, I was home alone at the time, while my mom was at work, about a 5-minute walk away. My mom had let our neighbor and her boyfriend come in and use our phone several other times before, so I assumed nothing was wrong with it and let him in, bringing him into the living room, which is toward the front of our apartment, to use the phone in there. He picks up the receiver, dials a number, waits a few seconds, and then hangs up the phone. He does this a couple more times before the front door of the building opens. You can easily hear the front door open from where we were. It's a heavy door, the walls are thin, and the way our building is set up, it's a small old single-family house converted into apartments. It's easily heard. My mom and I's apartment was the only one on the first floor, and our upstairs neighbor's apartment was the only one above us. Irrelevant, but there was also a much smaller apartment below us. My neighbor's boyfriend looked at me, put his finger to his lips like he was trying to shush me, and told me not to tell anyone he was there before speed walking to my room at the other end of the apartment. I watched my bedroom door close right before there was a loud, hard, cop-like knock on the door. My jaw dropped as I opened the door to see a cop. He asked if my neighbor's boyfriend was there, and, being scared, I stammered out, "Yeah, he just went in my room." The officer asked if he could come in, which I agreed to, and as he was coming in, he asked if I could let his partner in the back door and lead them to my room. We walked together to the back of the apartment, and I let his partner in. The back door to the apartment was right next to my bedroom door, but we had to walk around the kitchen table to get there. There was just barely enough space between the two doors to fit a narrow rectangular table without blocking the path to either door. After I let them into my room, I watched as they pulled my neighbor's boyfriend out of my bedroom closet. As they brought him out of my room and toward the back door, which just led to an enclosed fire escape, they told me to go wait in the living room while they brought him out the back. I walked back to the living room, and after they closed the door, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could hear the distinct sound of metal clicking and quickly realized that he'd just been handcuffed. Still scared, I waited for the police car to drive away before I grabbed my keys, made sure the back door was locked, and, locking the front door on my way out, I ran to my mom's work, crying. Pretty sure I cut the 5-minute trip into about 2 minutes, and I've never been a fast runner. I was fueled entirely on adrenaline and fear at that point, and I just wanted my mom. When I told her what happened, my mom was pissed that he had used me the way he had, hiding out in a child's bedroom closet, of all places, to try to keep the cops from finding him. She gave me a short but gentle lecture that night about not letting people in to use the phone, telling me that I was not to let people in, even if I knew them, unless he was home. I don't know what exactly he was wanted for, nor do I want to know what would have happened if the cops had not shown up. I don't know if he had known that the cops were on their way and had come to my apartment specifically to hide from them, or if he was up to something else. Old upstairs neighbor's boyfriend, let's not meet again. Ever. And back in 2015, I was working as a live-in home health aide for a wealthy family. It was just me and my patient living in a very nice condo in a quiet neighborhood on a golf course. We were the youngest people who lived there. I was 27 at the time. My patient was a 21-year-old male with Asperger's, SPD, and BPD, and some substance abuse problems. He had recently gotten into some trouble and been legally declared incompetent. We will call him Jake. Jake was a nice kid, but he had severe emotional issues and almost no social awareness, compounded by the refusal to take prescribed medication, which worked incredibly well when he took it, and drug abuse. He was taken advantage of a lot because of the crowd that he hung around with. Right before I moved in, 6 friends came to hang out with Jake one day and ended up staying for 2 weeks, draining Jake's bank account on various drugs, meth, coke, MDMA, and weed, and absolutely trashing the condo. Jake was lonely, and he never said no to people. He wanted them to like him. Honestly, I think Jake was 14 or 15 years old mentally. I think he turned to drugs to deal with depression and anxiety, and also to fit in with the people around him. He's much better now. It was a sweet gig. I was paid very well, lived in a nice condo rent-free, and basically just had to keep our house clean, keep food in the fridge, and make sure he took his medication. When I moved in, my boss, Jake's mother, warned me about a girl who occasionally stayed with her father, who was our downstairs neighbor. She told me that the girl was named Amber, and that she looked younger, but she was 37 years old, tall, blonde, and very thin. She was right. She looked much younger, like 25-ish. She said Amber didn't have a car or a job, and that she was an addict who liked to use Jake. Amber's father had custody of her 2 children, and she would come visit the kids and stay for a few days a week. She said one day Amber asked to use Jake's car for an hour, and ended up running off with it for 2 weeks. Amber was also the one who introduced Jake to the 6 friends who trashed the condo. She was bad news and was never allowed to be there. She wanted me to call her immediately if Amber stopped by or Jake went anywhere with her. After the theft, she put a GPS on Jake's car, and allegedly she could stop the engine. My boss made it clear that she didn't expect me to be a security guard, just to notify her of things that were going on. Leading up to this event, I had a few run-ins with Amber, where I had to politely tell her that things like that were not allowed to come into the apartment. Jake could not take her to the store or anywhere else. No, Jake couldn't go to a party at her boyfriend's house, etc. Amber was always spaced out. Like, she talked slow and seemed wide-eyed and off. She explained to me that she'd been hit by a car while riding a bike recently, and complained that she was the one who ended up going to jail. I was like, how? Apparently, she takes a lot of Xanax and was under the influence. So I think that explains the spaced out part. Anyway, she was never aggressive, but it was clear that she didn't like me, and often would say things like, Jake is his own person. He's a 21-year-old man. He doesn't need permission. And whenever she spoke to Jake, when we saw her at the gym or in the parking lot, she would be whispering to him, no doubt trying to manipulate him into giving her money or something. Anyway, on to the incident. Jake was out of state with his father, giving me a mini vacation. My best friend was staying over to spend a few days with me, and we were drinking PBR and watching RuPaul's Drag Race. It's like 11 p.m. We hear a light knock on the door. I go investigate through the peephole and see it's Amber. I ignore her. She knocks louder about 30 seconds later. I watch her leave through the peephole and sit back down, telling my friend the situation. 5 minutes go by, and she's back. This time, she is pounding on the door like a cop. I'm getting pissed because I'm off work, and I don't want to deal with her crazy, especially with my friend over, so I say nothing and go back to the couch. She knocks like a normal person and starts saying, "Hello, Jake, OP? I need help. Hello?" I still don't answer. Then I hear her try to open the door. It's locked. Always. I'm a habitual door locker. And this enrages her or something, and she starts screaming and pounding on the door nonstop. I get up and look through the peephole again, and she looks like a demon. Her pupils were huge, so I think she was on something. She looked crazed. Her hair was tangled and wild. She was sweaty and angry. Looking back, I'll never forget those wide pupils looking at me through an evil glare. I ask her through the door what she wants. She says she needs to speak to Jake right now. He owes her money, LOL, and she needs a ride to her boyfriend's house right now. I tell her Jake isn't home. She then asks me if I'll take her. I tell her no, I've been drinking and I'm going to bed. She let out a frustrated scream, punched the door, and left. My friend and I went to bed shortly after. Didn't hear from her again after that. The next morning, we're getting ready to leave to go to breakfast. I hear a knock like a policeman's knock at the door. You know the sound. I look through the peephole expecting to see Amber, but this time, it's an actual cop. I open my door and can see my parking lot is full of police. There is a van marked crime scene unit and an ambulance. I honestly assume Amber overdosed or something. The cop wants to ask me if I heard anything strange last night. I tell him about my encounter with Amber and ask if she's okay. He tells me that she's in custody for the murder of her father. Does Jake own a crossbow, and is it missing? Yes and yes, it's been missing for weeks. He says I need to speak to some detectives at the station. So, I don't know if she came to my door before or after she murdered her father with a fucking crossbow like she's Tyrion Lannister or something. But the detective told me that his theory was that she was a heroin addict, and she was withdrawing and needed to get to her boyfriend's for more dope. She tried to get Jake to drive her, and when that didn't work, she asked her father, who refused. This is what went down. They argued. Other neighbors heard that. She killed him with the stolen crossbow and stole his truck. She only got a mile away before she was signaled to pull over. She led the cops in a high-speed chase over the span of 2 counties before she finally lost control and crashed. The cops were only pulling her over on suspicion of drunk driving, but when they went to speak to her, she told them that she was speeding because she needed to check on her dad. She thinks someone stabbed him. They asked her why she thought that, and she wouldn't answer. They sent police for a welfare check, and they found him before her sons did. So, that was the time my crazy drug addict neighbor murdered her father with my patient's crossbow. Yeah, let's never meet again. Last year, after a blissful first year living in a new apartment, all on my own for the first time, a man moved in next door that I'll never forget. The layout of the apartment is crucial to understanding this incident. The most important part is that my balcony and his balcony are only partially separated by a wall. There is a solid 2-foot gap in which you can easily walk from one to the other. For context, I previously had a very lovely woman living next door for the entire first year I lived there, who never crossed this balcony threshold without being explicitly invited. I only throw this in there so you can understand I wasn't previously concerned about someone infiltrating my space. The first time I met this new neighbor, he was unloading groceries from his massive truck into the assigned parking spot next to mine. As I was driving up, he and a girl I assumed to be his girlfriend were unloading boxes from Costco. I noticed them speaking, and as soon as I was out of the car, they went silent. I nodded to them, proceeded to the elevator, and the guy ran up behind me, threw some boxes down, and begged me to wait. No problem, I'm a good neighbor. While in the elevator, the girlfriend refused to make eye contact or speak to me. A little weird, but I just thought that she was shy. But he quickly introduced himself and was extremely chatty. In the 45 seconds it takes to get to the floor where our apartments were, he asked me how I liked the place, where I was from, and where I worked. Looking back, his enthusiasm was a little strange, but I chalked it up to him being excited to be in a new place. For the sake of the rest of this story, let's call him Sam. Sam was maybe 33, 6 foot tall, with a slim muscular build, and had hair buzzed extremely short, as if to mask his balding. Pretty average looking dude by all accounts. The first few weeks, we ran into each other often, and he always made small talk, and always refers to me as Miss. I assume it's because he forgot my name, but wanted to be polite. I almost never see his girlfriend after the first night, but occasionally, I can hear him talking to a woman in his apartment as the walls are reasonably thin. One night, about 3 months after Sam moved in, my boyfriend is spending the night and we were watching movies on the couch. It's maybe 11:30 p.m. The back of my couch is against the wall I share with Sam, and we hear some banging noises. My first thought is that him and his girlfriend must be getting it on. My boyfriend and I laugh and turn the volume up a bit to drown them out. Then, in addition to the banging, the neighbors begin screaming. We can hear objects being thrown and glass shattering. The words are muffled, but there is distinctively anger and crying going on. My boyfriend, the gem that he is, steps onto the semi-shared balcony and in his loudest voice yells over, without crossing onto Sam's balcony, "Everything okay in there?" The girl opens the sliding glass door on Sam's side a minute or two later and says, "Sorry about that." So, we leave it alone. I'm concerned, but we have no idea what actually happened and decide to go to bed. Big mistake, I know. I wake up around 3 a.m. to more screaming, but my boyfriend refuses to wake up, and I'm not about to take my 5-foot self to break up whatever is going on at 3 a.m. I considered calling the police, but was so drowsy I convinced myself I dreamed it. I deeply regret that decision. The next morning, I woke up to some terrible personal news, an entirely unrelated death of a friend, and pretty much put the events of that night on the back burner. I didn't forget, but it also wasn't on my mind. Fast forward about 2 weeks, and I'm outside reading a book in a robe, sports bra, and shorts. I'm in a chair that faces away from Sam's apartment, so I can't see his side from where I am. I'm deep in my book when suddenly, I get tapped on the shoulder. Sam is standing behind me and asks if we can talk for a second. This man has already crossed an, albeit invisible, line by coming on my side of the balcony, but I also can't get to my door without physically moving him aside, so I ask him what's going on. He told me it was his birthday, and he asked if I knew where to get weed because, quote, "I seem like a girl who knows how to have a good time." As we live in a state where weed is legal, I told him that I'm sure Google would provide the best dispensary in the area, but I personally didn't have any. He proceeds to tell me how drunk he got last night, and at this point, I'm itching for an exit. As I start to move as if to signal I'm done talking, he reaches out from my shoulder and tells me that he hit and scratched my car last night because he was driving very, very wasted. He says all of this with a smile on his face, almost laughing. I'm surprised, but mostly just want to get away from him because my creep senses are starting to tingle, and I don't want to blow up at him for hitting my car. He says he'll send me his insurance info if I give him my number, and thankfully, I knew that would be a bad call. I make a bad nervous joke about knowing where he lived and said if the damage was bad enough, I would knock on his door to get his insurance. He counters by saying he'll leave a note with his info on my door. He retreats from my balcony while also saying he'd prefer to just pay me cash and not involve insurance. I give it an hour or so and then head down to assess the damage. I did this because I didn't want to walk down at the same time as him or risk having him follow me. Sure enough, there are 2 new long scratches on the driver's door. They're not deep, just kind of superficial, or worthy of a call to insurance immediately. I really just didn't want to get involved with him in any way, so I decided I could deal with the scratches, but this little event has kind of shaken me. At this point, I knew something was off with him. Nothing unusual happens as far as I'm aware this night. The next day is a Saturday, and as I had to work the next day, I'm home alone, watching some actiony movie, and it's around 11 p.m. I'm on the sofa with my cat curled up on me, and the movie is relatively loud, so it takes me a little while to register this banging noise coming from the hallway of my apartment building. I honestly only noticed because my cat had woken up and got all puffed up and freaked out. I turn down the volume of the film, and suddenly the banging is getting louder and louder. And just as I stand up, I hear the 5 words no one wants to hear coming from their door.
"Open up, it's the police."
My stomach dropped to the floor. I had lied to Sam the day before. I totally had weed. And I had smoked a joint outside on the balcony, the part furthest away from Sam's, maybe 20 minutes before. I'm totally panicked, high as a kite, and trying to control my breathing so I don't immediately come off as suspicious before I answer the door. I remember checking the peephole to see a close-up of a cop's face, and then opening the door and coming face to face with 6 officers, all with guns drawn. I'm about half a second away from completely pissing my pants in fear, still convinced I'm somehow in trouble for smoking a joint. The officer who seems to be in charge can sense instantly the level of my panic, and he says, "Ma'am, you're not in trouble. We need to speak with you about your neighbor. Can we come in?" At this point, I'm reeling, and my whole being is tense. I let the cops in, but my heart hasn't moved from my throat. The policeman in charge asked me about my interactions with Sam. I tell them I barely know him, that he just lives next to me and only moved in a few months ago. I ask why they needed to be in my apartment. I'm scared, but also I don't typically get along with cops, and I have the right to know why 6 of them practically waved their guns in my face. The lead officer proceeds to tell me that Sam is a bad guy. He apparently beat his girlfriend so badly the night prior that she was now in the ICU for her injuries. They also told me Sam had a gun and had barricaded himself in the apartment next to mine. They said they had spoken to my building manager and knew my place had access to his balcony and they needed to use it. Then they asked me to go into my bedroom and lock the door and turn the lights off. The next 30 to 45 minutes were absolute hell. In my panic, I had left my cell phone on my kitchen counter and had to sit in my room just listening to the commotion. No shots were ever fired, but there was a lot of yelling and what sounded like things being thrown. Eventually, after what felt like a lifetime, the main officer knocked on my door and told me that Sam had been arrested and thanked me for letting them use my apartment. They asked me questions for maybe 15 more minutes and left. I wish this is where the story ended, but there's a bit more. In the days following Sam's arrest, I became even more panicked about him coming back to the apartment building, worried about retaliation. I hadn't said anything to the police to technically incriminate him. I had proof of nothing except his word that he was the one who scratched my car, but I did tell them about the night my boyfriend and I heard them fight. About 5 days later, Sam reappeared at the building as I was coming home from work one evening. He tried to approach me, but the elevator shut just as he was running to catch it. My whole body got tense, like the feeling when you've come this close to getting in a car accident, but narrowly avoid it. I stayed off my balcony entirely from this point and always kept the curtains closed. We didn't speak or really see each other at all for another few weeks, and then had our final interaction. Sam stopped me in the parking lot one night, running after me as I was about to get on the elevator. He begged me to tell him why I let the cops in that night. I told him the honest truth, that I was stoned, I didn't know what to do, and had a bad history with cops. This is all true, and again, I was concerned about him trying to retaliate. He then got pretty upset and kept trying to repeat the question, obviously wanting a different answer. When I couldn't give him one, he then offered me $3,000 to testify as a character witness on his behalf, because I knew him and knew how he really treated women. I was speechless and very freaked out. He told me his hearing was the next Thursday morning and he asked if I could show up. I was like a deer frozen in headlights for a moment, and then somehow got the hell out of there after mumbling a string of words that were most likely incoherent. The Wednesday night before this trial, I came home from work and my cat was acting kind of weird, like something had just spooked her and her tail was puffed out. I kind of shook it off, but I noticed through the curtains there was something taped to the outside of my sliding glass door. Apparently, Sam had left a post-it with his phone number and name, and underneath had written, "I am counting on you." Needless to say, I never showed up. I took a photo of the post-it, grabbed my cat, locked all my doors, and stayed at my mom's house for about 5 days after that happened. I did phone the police to let them know he'd been on my balcony again, but they never followed up with anything. Eventually, my boyfriend came, and we went back to my place together. Everything was as it should have been. I never saw Sam again, but a few weeks later, a lady I'd never seen before was cleaning out his apartment. Maybe a month after that, new people moved in, and things have been normal ever since. I tried calling the police in the county jail to see if he was in lockup again, but no one was able to release information to me. I'm hoping that means he's there, if he did what the police said he did. So, Sam, I'm not really sure what happened, but my biggest regret is not calling the police when I felt like I should have in my gut. Let's never meet again.